going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. Another episode of the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast. I'm Dan Malin, joined by the FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year, Matt Selz. Matt, we're coming off a very interesting Michigan race where I guess the biggest dominator chalk in Kyle Busch busted early. I didn't have a bad day. I didn't have a great day. I had one lineup that was in it in the Chrome Horn in the last 20 laps. That kept me from really losing a ton of money. Kind of just a meh kind of week for me. But how did Michigan treat you?
It was okay. I'm not sure I expected there to be like a restrictor plate type big one that took out quite a lot of people. So that wasn't great. Late race restarts were kind of interesting. Especially Bubba's comment about how Joey Logano should get a big fat check from Ford, for kind of holding him up. Not that he said Joey did anything wrong.
No, he didn't say that.
Just that basically Joey did what he had to do for the manufacturer. Kind of held up another guy from having a shot. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting race. Harvick late looked like he had a rocket ship under him. That car came alive. Not necessarily shocking he'd won there 3 times in a row previously, so now it's 4 times in a row at Michigan for Harvick. It did break a streak, though, that like the last 9 races in Michigan had not seen a new winner on the season. And so that broke Harvick winning broke the streak. Now there's 15 winners, so we've got a legit shot here at having too many winners to win your way into the playoffs.
It's crazy because like this week is definitely a week where Martin Truex Jr. could go out, win.
Yes, or Blaney.
We saw Blaney perform very well here. There's still Daytona on the horizon, and anybody could win that. That could be a race that Bubba wins. It's
and the road courses have been a little unpredictable too this year.
Yeah.
Like Larson has not looked good. The Hendrick cars generally haven't looked all that great at road courses, aside from Chase Elliott Road America. Could we see Tyler Reddick go out and win a 3rd straight road course at Watkins Glen? I don't know. Yeah, kind of nuts.
We do have a little bit of news to get to. NASCAR silly season still rolling. We're getting a clearer picture of the 2023 lineup. Noah Gragson is officially getting the promotion from the number 9 car in the Xfinity Series with JRM, and he is taking over Ty Dillon's seat in the 42 car for Petty GMS. Given that Petty GMS is a 2-car team and they're going to be going forward with Eric Jones and Noah Gragson, do you think that this is this is probably an upgrade over Ty Dillon, correct?
I would presume so.
I'd say so.
Gragson's a more talented driver than Ty Dillon, for sure. Dillon is a guy who tends to probably take better care of his equipment than Noah Gragson. Definitely does not
Checkers or wreckers, baby.
Yeah, definitely doesn't have the personality that Gragson does, for better or worse, whichever way you want to look at it. So yeah, I would say that this is an upgrade for them. It was kind of Gragson's only real, that or the 8, right? But the 8's not actually open until 2024 at this point, pending they buy Tyler Reddick out and force 2311 to make a move sooner. But yeah, this was really the only known Chevy car to be open at this point, as far as I'm aware. So, I think it's an upgrade. I thought it was very interesting that they announced it sans sponsorship. That they felt comfortable enough with him in the car to do it without a full-time or at least mostly sold sponsorship package. But on that front, let's play some stuff out for a little bit. By the way, Drew Dollar put out a tweet with 9 smiley faces on it. If you want to get cryptic and believe that he knows that he's going to the 9 for JRM, I think that's a bad decision.
It would be a bad decision from a driver's standpoint, but he does have funding.
He does have funding, which is good because he's going to wreck a whole lot of cars. And so that funding is going to go for paying back the labor time for JRM staff. So there's a couple of interesting possibilities that could be arising here. Kurt Busch is out this week again, in case you hadn't heard. He called this week the most frustrating because he felt very good mentally until he tried to get physically ready to go race, and then it backtracked on him. Let's play this out and say that Kurt Busch decides that this is his last year, that the concussion is just too much. He doesn't want to risk it. He's got some other stuff he could wind up doing. So
Pretty good in the booth.
he is pretty good in the booth.
I enjoy him in the booth.
So let's say, for sake of argument, that Kurt Busch steps aside. He had signed a multi-year deal with 23XI, right? That leaves a Toyota open. Do we think one of two things happens? Either Denny talks his boss and Ty Gibbs' grandfather into abandoning the development plan for Ty Gibbs and sticking Ty Gibbs in the 45 car, which he's already grown accustomed to at this point, having basically a month in the Cup Series. Or, option two, Ty Gibbs stays down in Xfinity. Kyle goes to drive for Denny and takes over his brother's ride. Or option three, RCR goes, it's going to be way too awkward for another year. We're going to buy out Tyler Reddick, and Tyler Reddick moves into the 45 for 2023.
All right. That's a lot of moving pieces.
Only one of those is going to happen because we're not putting three drivers in the 45, obviously.
I would say if the first option happens where they talk Gibbs or Denny talks Joe Gibbs into letting Ty Gibbs take over the 45, I imagine it has to be some kind of a handshake deal where, it's just kind of like a starter ride for Gibbs. That's not going to be his final landing spot. Like, there's no way in hell Joe Gibbs does not want. He wants his grandson eventually taking over the 18. That's how I imagine it.
Is it the 18 or would it be the 11? Because sentimentally, the 11 is more sentimental number-wise to Gibbs.
Fair. One of those
Could
two.
it be a handshake deal that basically once Denny retires, Gibbs gets
either Denny or once one of those seats is freed up? Because I'm growing more and more optimistic by the day that Kyle Busch is probably going to end up back at JGR.
Interesting.
Because
there's
I would like to see, for the sake of drama, I would like to see a really big bombshell drop where Kyle Busch somehow ends up at SHR, and that's a huge boost to that team because really outside of Kevin Harvick, you can make an argument for Chase Briscoe. Eric Almirola might come back on a part-time schedule. Cole Custer has to go. They need to get good drivers in those cars.
Yes.
So I mostly think that Gibbs, I think the most likely scenario is still that Gibbs stays in Xfinity for 2023. I still think he's probably too young for the Cup Series, and I'm saying this after he finished top 10 last week and scored his first top 10 in the Cup Series. But I would be very, very surprised if he had a full-time Cup ride next year. And if that was the case, he'd already be a top 20, arguably a top 15 driver in the Cup Series. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it in just a small sample size. He does belong there. But I think I would be surprised if they deviated from this plan that they have to keep him in Xfinity for 2023.
I would be too. So I think if Kurt retires, I think the most likely option is that Tyler Reddick goes, okay, why don't you just buy me out? And then go, RCR can call up somebody, another, or can sell the maybe that's what happens. They get Junior to buy charters from RCR, and the money that they sell the charters for essentially pays for the buyout for Reddick to move to the 45 a year early, and then they can go to a 3-car team if they need to, but then there's no extra outlay for 23XI because they don't have to get a third car on the track.
Okay. Now, my next question is, how likely is it that RCR just willingly buys Tyler Reddick out? He's got 2 wins this year, and he's arguably that team's best chance to get a championship either this year or next year. Because whoever steps in for Tyler Reddick in the 8 car, they're not going to be nearly on his level in terms of just talent.
Right.
So
it's
this is
probably
RCR.
pretty slim.
This is RCR's best chance to get a championship either this year or next year. And so even in this situation where we think that they could buy Tyler Reddick out, I'm like, I understand he's gone for 2024, but if you're championship hunting, he's your best chance.
Yeah, I mean, is there anybody besides Noah capable of coming up from the Xfinity Series right now? Aside from Ty.
Maybe Allgaier.
Yeah, but that's a drop in.
It's not.
You're getting older and you're losing talent.
No,
Yeah.
like Gibbs is the biggest name right now.
Right. So if 2311 can't convince Joe Gibbs to allow Ty to come race for Michael Jordan, and they don't convince RCR to buy out Reddick, and Kurt says, I've had enough, then there's an opening we didn't foresee coming.
I love how this is all dependent on Kurt's decision. Because I think he still wants to race. I think he just
I
wants
mean,
to
it
fulfill
is. He's got a multi-year deal, so he's got a seat for next year. If he wants to come back, he's already got a deal. It's just a matter of does he, at whatever he is, 42 years old, want to give it a go knowing that another hard hit forces a bigger concussion.
I think once he can get his health right, I think it's a better time for him to answer that question. I mean, he's had a good year. He's got a win.
Yeah.
He's qualified for the playoffs. Like,
yeah. So on that note, though, let's turn our attention to Richmond this week. It's kind of known as the action track, though it's been lacking in action for most of the last decade.
Well, the spring race was pretty good.
The spring race was, but that's like 1 in 10 races. Are we going to
Sure,
get credit
but
for that?
I mean, I think the big concern about this car on short flat tracks coming into Richmond was like Richmond was for the most part a pretty boring track, kind of tough to pass. You get multiple drivers falling many laps down, but in the spring race we saw 4 different drivers lead at least 60 laps. We saw plenty of drivers log double-digit fastest laps, and I'll let you spill the beans on the one that's probably the most surprising.
Oh, we
But
want to do that
overall,
now?
go ahead.
Do we want to do that now, or we want to go until we're talking about budget plays?
I don't see why we would wait until budget plays because I'm not gonna get a lot of exposure to him this week.
Yeah, okay. So Michael McDowell in the spring race put together one of the more ridiculous stat lines you're going to see. He started 24th. That's not the ridiculous part. He finished 30th. Okay. A lot of people start in the mid 20s and finish 30th. He only got as high as 20. He also finished 5 laps down.
Yeah.
But in that time, he managed to put up 31 fastest laps. Tied in with William Byron and only 3 behind Truex for the race lead.
It's one of life's greatest mysteries.
How in the world did Michael McDowell put up 31 fastest laps while running basically between 24th and 30th? His average running position was 30th. So like he was 20th for a blip of a second. And then he started falling backwards despite having a rocket ship that put up 31 fastest laps.
I wonder if he was just way off the cycle and pit strategy of everybody else, that at some point in the race
he had way fresher tires.
And when he just had way fresher tires over the field, and he was just clicking off the fastest laps multiple laps down.
It's entirely possible. That's really the only thing that makes any sense, in my opinion. To give you an idea, in the other races combined this year, Michael McDowell has 36 total fastest laps. He hasn't had more than 9 in any other race. So that would be my assumption, is that he was so far back they were just doing home run pit calls, and he had very fresh tires when everybody else didn't. That would be my only my only thought.
All right. This weekend's schedule it's nice. It's compact. I actually really like it. I'm not going to be hustling to get the playbook out early on Saturday, even though it'll probably still be up Saturday morning with updates following after practice and qualifying. But the Camping World Truck Series has practice and qualifying starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The Cup Series will follow at 5:05 with their practice and qualifying. Truck Series, the Worldwide Express 250, scheduled for a green flag shortly after 8 p.m. Hard to believe there's only 6 races left for the trucks this year, and it's August.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts because they end their championships the same weekend as everybody else's, which
Yeah,
is the first weekend in November. So
they have 1 race in August, which is this race. They have 2 in September, 2 in October, and then the championship race in November.
that's a whole lot of off time.
They got a lot of off time coming up. But then the Cup Series races 3 p.m. Sunday. Yeah, pretty basic week. I do like these later weeks. I cherish the weekends where I only have to worry about one playbook.
Yeah, I do kind of miss the Saturday night Cup race at Richmond. Like Saturday under the lights for the Cup race at Richmond is kind of nice. I'm a little bummed they got rid of it. I kind of felt like the passing or the track was kind of better at nighttime. Um, but TV and money and whatever dictates it's a Sunday afternoon race. So, um, it is what it is. It'll be a 400 lap race for the Cup Series, 300 miles around that 0.75 mile flat kind of D-shaped oval. Um, short track that we've all come to love, as it were.
Well, I guess we can just dive right in and start talking about Joe Gibbs Racing and the Toyotas. This is a track that they historically dominate at. We saw Denny win here back in the spring. Kyle Busch only led 1 lap but had 24 fastest laps. Martin Truex Jr. led 80 laps with 34 fastest laps. Christopher Bell led 63 laps with 19 fastest laps, and these are all Joe Gibbs Racing drivers. They got the win. They got plenty of laps led, plenty of fastest laps. Like, they show up with the right setups for these short flag tracks. And I don't think we should expect any different this weekend. And especially in a win, it's pretty much a must-win scenario for Martin Truex Jr.
Yes. At this point, yeah, because yes, he's got the road course coming up, which obviously he's been historically pretty good at road courses, though not so much this year because JGR has absolutely bombed the setup for every other road course that we've seen so far. So yeah, I would look out of those guys. I'm still not sold on Denny. Yes, he won it. I understand, but he led like 5 laps, and it was basically because he caught somebody on a restart. Um, like I just have a hard time putting my finger on Hamlin as to when he's going to have speed and when he's not going to have speed. Um, so if I'm going with anybody from JGR, we're going with Truex. Um, and then probably Bell would be my number 2.
Is that just based on pricing or?
Yeah, he's certainly cheaper. At 9,600, he's almost $2,000 less than Kyle Busch. He's like 1,500 less than Denny, and 1,000 less than Truex. But it also has to do with the fact that he had speed here earlier in the year. He won New Hampshire, which is a comparable track. I don't remember exactly what he did at Phoenix. I can go back and check. He started well, but didn't finish very well there. So, there is that. But the Toyotas have kind of been building in speed of late. But there's also the fact that Christopher Bell has been on kind of a heater in the second half of the season. Like, they have figured something out with that team. They have consistently had good speed.
He's got
Hasn't
double-digit
really.
laps led in 4 straight races.
Yeah, he put up. Even though he finished 26th last weekend, he had 31 laps led and 31 fastest laps. Yeah, completely different track setup. But again, New Hampshire's comparable,
Didn't
and
he get into some just kind of like bad luck wreck last week with
yeah,
Chastain when Chastain was a lap down but trying to get around him?
yeah.
Yeah, that
So
sucks.
and New Hampshire, Nashville's a little comparable, not totally, but a little bit. He had okay speed there. So yeah, I would say, look, Kyle has been kind of all over the place. The weeks you bet on him, he crashes
Yeah.
out. The weeks you don't is when he shows up and runs well. Denny, I can't put my finger on it. And Truex, A, it's desperation. B, he's been very, very good and has led a bunch of laps on these flatter tracks like New Hampshire. Led 172 laps at New Hampshire. Led 82 laps at Nashville. He led 80 at Richmond earlier in the year. So, you know, I'm kind of on those two guys from JGR.
All right. I guess we'll scroll on down. I don't know. Does Chase Elliott excite you very much at 10,800?
No.
Really? Is it just how Hendrick has looked on this style of track this year? I mean,
Yeah, plus,
because Byron got a bunch of dominator points here earlier in the year, and then he went and won Martinsville, and then he kind of fell off the face of the earth.
yeah. I mean, there is that. What did Chase do? Chase only had a so-so race here. Like he was 10-5 last time they were here. He put up 34 points. Started 15th, finished 14th, had 8 fastest laps.
Mm-hmm.
You need a whole heck of a lot more from Chase Elliott at that price tag. Um, Kyle Larson, like the whole Hendrick gang, just I don't know. I feel like they all know they're going to make the playoffs, and they're kind of content to
They're
just
just coasting.
they're just kind of coasting, and then we'll see like them kind of turn it on um, a little bit. Now Larson was able to pass here in the spring race. Started 21st, finished fifth um, at 10-2, and he's 10-3 this week. So there's that. I don't know. What is your feel on Hendrick? Like, how are you ranking Hendrick this week?
My thoughts on Hendrick are obviously I'm not as confident in them as I am with JGR because I have more faith in JGR like just showing up with the right setup.
Right.
For Hendrick and a lot of the other teams, it's going to be what did they look like in practice and how well they qualify. And even then, I don't know how committed I'm going to be. We finally got a good week out of Alex Bowman last week, but so what? He started 30th, and he was just the ultimate chalk.
Right. He was
Um,
a free square.
yeah.
Yeah.
Byron had a pretty good race, but it's like he started 20th, finished 12th, didn't have a single lap led or fastest lap. Um, so I really just want to see what they can offer. I guess I'm kind of on board where it's just like I'm not crazy about this team. I'd rather take a look at the playoff picture and see who needs a win, which is Truex, Blaney, and a handful of other drivers. And then I'm trying to see who's just going to be racing for track position and points. Because you are a little accurate where it just seems like these Hendrick guys could just be waiting for the playoffs to start. Um, I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts on that, but otherwise, I was just going to pivot right to Ryan Blaney.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what to do with Byron at this point. I mean, we saw him flat out dominate this race and then Martinsville, and that speed has just not been there
He only has
since.
one top 10 since Martinsville.
Yeah, and he's not topped. Like he's had 41 laps led, and that was at Atlanta. Other than that, nothing better than like 25 laps led in any given race. So I don't know. I'm with you. It's going to come down to what we have to, what they're showing on the track when they're on the track. Um, Blaney, man, he's like a habit I can't kick.
Yeah, but he's
Like
been good on this style of track this year.
he has been. He has been. And it's not like he was bad at Michigan. He finished fifth. Um, certainly got back on the right side of the scoring column there
He wasn't
after.
great at New Hampshire, but Phoenix, he led over 100 laps.
Yeah.
Richmond in the spring led over 100 laps. It grabbed a top 5 with 31 fastest laps at Martinsville. You know, finished 4th at Gateway with 38 fastest laps and 12 laps led. So, I mean, 9,900. Like, I imagine there will be a decent amount of ownership on Blaney. Needs the win. Has had solid runs on this style of track. I'd be surprised if that team just put up a dud and just farted their way out of this race.
I tend to agree with that. As for his teammates, I'm treating Joey Logano like Denny Hamlin, man. I can't figure that guy out.
Yeah, that's kind of fair.
I
mean, he did
can't.
win Gateway, didn't we? Didn't he?
Yeah, but he didn't really like. Did he really dominate Gateway? Not really. 20 fastest laps, 22 laps led.
Basically, he had track position at the end.
Yeah, track position, he held it well. He did win Darlington, but that's not really comparable. I don't know. Like, Logano didn't exactly run very well here early in the season. He ran okay at Phoenix. Like, and I have no idea what to do with Austin Cindric right now. Like I know you can't really count Michigan against him, right? Because like basically half the field wrecked out of that race.
What's so hard to gauge with Cindric, though, is that he won the Daytona 500, and then he went on a very prolonged, like, Daytona hangover,
Right.
where he was having just a ton of bad results.
He got worse. He got worse finishes in each of the next 4 races.
Yeah, he
He
really
went
didn't
12,
turn it
19,
around.
24, 32 until like Coda.
Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty solid month of June. Last week, I'm kind of with you. That was, I don't know, that big one just kind of sucked.
Also, it's Michigan. You can't really like Michigan and Richmond are
They're
completely
not
opposite ends of the
comparable at all.
spectrum for NASCAR. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. He had a very good June into early July.
Yeah.
But now he's had since New Hampshire, he's had one top 10, and it was at the crazy Brickyard, which we basically expected him to do well at anyway. I don't know. If I'm going Penske, it's going to be Blaney, and then the other two I'm going to have to see what they look like.
I think the other tough thing about Cindric too is that he could go out and just qualify well. I think, I mean, dating back to the Coke 600, even Kansas before the All-Star race, he's got a handful of starting positions inside the top 6.
Yeah,
And that right there, you know, he doesn't scream as the kind of guy that can, at this stage in his career, still just doesn't let your jump off the page as the kind of guy that can like dominate a race necessarily.
right.
However, I'll say that if he somehow lands on the pole, then I'm very interested. Or even if he's on the front row, because we've seen the front row at Richmond have DFS success, and we've seen the pole sitter make it into the optimal lineup almost 7 straight races.
Yeah, I was actually just going to go there. Yeah, I think it's been 6 or 7 straight races this year, regardless of layout. Like legit 6 or 7 of the last 6 or 7 races in which the pole sitter has been in the optimal lineup. So there is that. And like we said before on short tracks, if you have track position, it can be very tough to pass on short tracks. Yeah, we gotta. I don't know. What are we doing with Chastain and Suarez?
I'm still playing Chastain just because I know that the car is pretty much showing up fast wherever they go. I understand he hasn't really paid off for DFS purposes the last few weeks, especially with Pocono, very chaotic road course race at Indy, and then last week's debacle. It was ugly, but that car had speed last week, and it was fast, and it was running up front until he and Suarez pitted, and then there was almost an immediate caution, and they were trying to make the lap up. But then he got into Bell. All in all, I'm still going to play Chastain. Suarez, it's probably going to depend on where he starts, but I'll be mixing in some shares of him too, just because I know that car will likely have speed as well.
Yeah, as long as the tire doesn't go down.
I do think that Chastain is putting himself in a spot, given the most recent results, where we could start seeing a little bit of leverage with him, not a ton, because if he keeps qualifying outside the top 15, which he's done in 4 straight races, there are just going to be plenty of people that still flock to him. But they show up with speed on. It doesn't matter the style of track. Like those cars are fast.
Yeah, I mean, Suarez started 19th, finished 9th at New Hampshire. He had a pretty good run let's keep going here. We're going to roll all the way back to the Toyota Owners 400. And a solid run at Richmond earlier in the year. He was a lot cheaper than he is now. Like, Martinsville's never been his track, so I'm not really going to hold that against him, really. Phoenix, good run, started 23rd, finished 9th. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's going to depend on where Suarez qualifies. For me, I'm starting to get a little tired of the Ross Chastain one-trick pony. I've got speed, and as long as I don't hit anything, which turns out to be really hard for him to do, then I'll have a good day. But if something gets in my way, I'm gonna run over it, and then I'm gonna wreck your day and get another set of, like, there's no way he makes it through the playoffs. Literally no way. There's like 17 drivers that want to take pot shots at him when the playoffs start. Denny and Chase are at the top of that list, but now you've got Christopher Bell is on the list. Pretty sure Kyle Busch is going to do it just because he likes playing that role. You've got like a bunch of other dudes who are lining up to take shots at him. So I'm getting a little tired of his shtick. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Any love for Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, the last 2 winners in the Cup Series? Harvick gets a price bump to 9,100. Tyler Reddick, price dip. Actually, he was 10,000 for the Brickyard or the road course race at Indy. He was 9,700 last week, and he's down to 8,800.
Yeah, still $600 more than the last time they were at Richmond, he was 8,200. He started 16th, finished 12th with 11 fastest laps in that race, so almost 5x there with 40 points. I don't know. This isn't necessarily his favorite style of track.
Nope.
He did run well at Phoenix. The problem is the high line at Richmond doesn't necessarily come in all that well, which is what he really wants to have happen. So, I mean, I'm okay with it. I think it's interesting to see where they'll come out in ownership given the price points. I mean, Kevin Harvick was fast at Richmond last time. He's shown really good speed in like 6 straight races now. So I think he's going to be a little bit more in vogue than Tyler Reddick will, even though Reddick's cheaper. Just because, like, Harvick just keeps locking in these top 10s for you. Doesn't really matter where he starts. He's going to get you fastest laps. He's going to get you maybe some top, some laps led. But he had speed at Richmond earlier in the year. He had speed at Phoenix earlier in the year. Clearly had speed at New Hampshire. Arguably could have won that race. So yeah, I think I'm probably leaning a little more Kevin Harvick than Tyler Reddick, but the leverage is probably higher on Reddick's side.
Bubba Wallace was not good on these flatter tracks earlier in the year. However, he's on one of the hottest streaks of his career. 4 straight top 10 finishes, 3 of those in the top 5, including a runner-up last week at Michigan. He's priced up to $8,000 right now, though, and this is not a super speedway. This is a track that he just historically does not perform all that well at. But again, he's in a Toyota. There's only 6 of them in the field, and if this is like a satellite or affiliate of Joe Gibbs Racing, we have to imagine that the Toyotas will show up with the right setup, and we'll get to the other Toyota after Bubba. But do you feel okay with Bubba going into this race? Because I understand he's on a hell of a run, but I'm still a little nervous about playing him at this track because if you lose track position here, if you lose a lap or two, it's really difficult to make it up.
Agreed. Agreed. He hasn't been hurt by his pit crew since they swapped.
Yeah.
But
I don't think Bell can complain about it either.
no, but also the tracks that they've raced on since they swapped, there was not very much penalty for a pit issue, right? It was tough to go a lap down with everything except for, I guess, New Hampshire. I'm kind of with you, right? Like, I want to get some exposure to him because he's on a hot streak, and until he doesn't have the. Also, not to mention that if he wins, he's in the playoffs too, right? Like, he's kind of fighting for a playoff spot at this point as well. But it's not a track that's been historically good for him. I get that this is the best equipment he's been in, but even earlier in the year in the same equipment, it was not a great run at Richmond. You want to turn your attention to the last Toyota on the field, a guy we kind of touched on with some scenarios earlier.
Go for it. Ty Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs, man, look, he's going to be popular again this week because people just want to play Ty Gibbs. They just want to get exposure to him. He's coming off a top 10. He's done well at this track in Xfinity. Like, it's Kurt did well did well earlier this year in this car. So, I mean, I get it. People are going to want to get exposure to him. But I don't know, man. I don't know what to.
I expressed my opinion before the podcast, and I understand it's before practice and qualifying, but I do have my concerns this week, just in terms of how I think the race narrative could play out, because this is a track, short flat tracks where drivers can lose multiple laps. It wouldn't surprise me if he got a little bullied by non-Toyota drivers, Fords, Chevys. Wouldn't be surprised if he maybe put the car on the wall, fell a couple laps down. And my opinion could change if he's fast and qualifies well, because if he qualifies well, I have more faith in him holding the position. Whereas if he qualifies poorly, a lot of people are going to jump on the PD. But I still might not be entirely sold, because while the PD is there and like the opportunity
Yeah, he's got to fight his way through the field.
he's got to fight his way through a field at a
and
track
it's going to be a
difficult
fight
to pass. Yeah.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this before the pod. That reminds me, we brought up Justin Haley at the Clash, who had speed, and obviously that's a far shorter track than this one. That's a quarter of a mile track, right? But Justin Haley, Cup rookie, had speed, was up with the big boys for the first time, and got flat bullied in that just got shoved around like a tag team match, like Chase and Denny did to Chastain at Gateway. Like, I could see that. I could see that happening if he starts up in the front of the field, or he's got at least one teammate that he can pair up with to try to make it through the field. He becomes a lot more attractive. But if it's just him on an island trying to work his way up, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I don't really want to like take away anything that he's done so far. Like he's been very
good.
impressive. Yeah, like I understand like he was scored from 10th at Pocono, which was stupid because he started at the rear as for the driver change, but finished top 20 in every single race. Got his first career top 10. He's so talented, and we were talking about him at the beginning of the podcast about where he could end up next year. He's very, very good. He's going to be in the Cup Series full time in 2 years, and I guess I shouldn't be that surprised that 40-1 winner this week, and he's like currently on DK Sportsbook. He's plus 650 for a top 5. I mean, not terrible odds, and he most certainly could do it. But at the same time, I I want to hit that right week when he does bust in a race, because 7,600 is still a price tag that people will pay for Ty Gibbs, because this is a value play for all intents and purposes. But this is one that's gaining traction and the popularity. I feel like last week was the week you wanted to be heavy on Gibbs, and I think this week, if I'm just looking at it from an ownership perspective, I think I may be a little bit underweight in the field, and we'll see what happens. I'm only playing the Chrome Horn nowadays just because I stopped playing the $50, $24 single entry contest just because the variance this year has been a little bit of a pain in the ass. But if I'm only doing 20 lineups, as it stands right now, I'm not that committed to Gibbs for the moment.
Yeah. Speaking of variance, there's been 50.
Did
I saw
I
a stat
bore you to
this
death
week.
right there?
No, it was a great breakdown. I was just saying. Speaking of variance, I read a stat this week that said there's been 55% more DNFs in the Cup Series this year than last year. So that's a huge jump. We almost never see jumps anywhere close to that high. So yeah, I mean, protecting your bankroll at this point is crucial. As we go further down, look, there's not a whole lot of dudes between, like, let's say 7,200 and like the rest that I'm all that excited about. Maybe Austin Dillon, because he kind of has a knack for showing up on tracks that you don't necessarily expect him to show up on.
Mm-hmm.
And he was decent at New Hampshire. He was solid at Nashville. If you want to go back to the spring race here, he got a top 10 here at Richmond in the spring. For Phoenix, it was an okay race, not great. So I'm okay going with Austin Dillon, $7,200. Didn't Keselowski have a ridiculously eventful Richmond race in the spring?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure I was overweight on him. I'm sure he did terrible.
I mean, he
Actually, not
finished
really.
13th, but like
Started 19th and finished 19th.
I seem to remember him kind of yo-yoing for some reason, and I don't know. Yeah, he got all the way back to 27th at one point. Finished 13th. His average run position was 13th. So it was a pretty decent run there. And look, you can't deny the speed that's been showing from these RFK cars over the last several races. Keselowski has 5 straight top 20s, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 5 straight top 20s. Only one of those is a top 10, but that was at New Hampshire. So, I don't know, man. It's pretty hard to get excited about, like, Amarola, Busher, Stenhouse. McDowell's got the weirdest stat line in quite a while at the spring race here. um, I don't know.
Surprised you didn't mention your boy Ty Dillon.
I mean, he's quality, right? But it's nothing to get excited about.
Because
Like,
he's going to qualify poorly.
I mean, he's going to qualify poorly, and he's going to finish like 24th, and then you're good. But like, is that sexy? No, not really. Like, it's dependable. It's it's like a Ford F-150, not like the Ford Mustang GT or the Ford GT, right? Like, he's good.
It is a little tough this week, and I don't think we need to necessarily preview all these value plays because they will present themselves to us after practice and qualifying.
Right.
But it is unfortunate when you know that you have to go down there and hit the right ones, because this is a race where you really do need multiple dominators. Given what we've seen from the next gen car on a variety of tracks, even these short flats, we're gonna see multiple dominators. That's just how it's gonna be. And I mean, even if you just plug in Bell and Truex right away, you're left with 29,800 on DraftKings for 4 remaining drivers. Sticking in the Brad Keselowski, Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe, Cindric, Austin Dillon, arguably Chris Busch or Eric Almirola. You're basically rounding out your lineup in that range. Or if you're trying to get up for maybe a more expensive PD play, let's assume Alex Bowman starts toward the rear once again. You really do need to find the right value plays, and it's hard to make an argument for many of them right now.
Right.
Because I know we talked about McDowell and same ends on the air, but at the same time, I'm not thrilled with his results in this car on this type of track.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, they'll present themselves, right? Somebody's going to screw up qualifying. Almost guaranteed. People do it every single week.
And for those wondering what I mean by McDowell's results, he started 22nd, finished 27th at Phoenix. Previously at Richmond, he finished 30th, which we alluded to with 31 fastest laps. Finished 25th at Martinsville. At Gateway, started 17th, finished 18th with 34 laps left. So it's like that's probably the only good performance he's had, and it was saved because of 34 laps led. Finished 28th at New Hampshire. So it's like I just haven't liked what I've seen on this style of track.
Agreed on that one. I don't know. Maybe Graxon comes and balls out because he got himself a full-time ride.
Good.
He could.
Don't think he will, but
he did not
could.
race this one in the spring, so he's kind of going to be a noob on this track in a Cup car. So we'll see what happens, but maybe that scares some people off. Maybe it doesn't. We'll see. We've talked about quite a few guys continuously this year between Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland, whatnot. But somebody down there is gonna be in the optimal because they're gonna have to be. And who knows? Maybe it's Ricky Stenhouse. I don't know. Didn't run all that well here in the spring, but prior to that, he'd actually been pretty solid at Richmond.
I'm pretty intrigued by Almirola because we know this is a style of track that he can do well at, and we've talked about it numerous times. But it's mostly the price tag that I really like at 6,800 because he was 8,000 for Phoenix, he was 77 for 5 for Martinsville. I mean, he went backwards in most of these races just because he was starting so high. But I mean, he got a top 5 at Gateway, and so I think DraftKings is mostly sleeping on this guy's price tag because the results, he has 3 finishes outside the top 30 in his last 4 races, so the results have been bad. But this is a style of track he can thrive at, and he's way too damn cheap.
I would look. I'll take shots on him in GPPs
because you have to assume he's also going to qualify well.
I mean, he qualified 10th there in the spring.
You can only PD from wherever he starts.
Yeah. I mean, he qualified 10th there in the spring. He did finish 21st, so that's not great. But he does have a decent history here. Stenhouse, prior to the last 2 Richmond races, finished 17th, 18th, 16th, 16th, and 13th at Richmond. So that's, and he moved up in all but one of those to finish there. So that's intriguing. Not saying it's great, but again, anybody that's down here, we're basically going to go with like a stable of 2 dudes for cash down in this range. It's basically going to be Ty Dillon as one of them. And then you could just take a guess on the other guy. But for GPPs, you're going to need somebody like a Stenhouse or an Almirola or Keselowski to, finish off a lineup or get you a hit somewhere that you weren't expecting. Because, if I go Harvick, Blaney, Truex, it gives me $6,800 for the last 3 spots on average. If I go Bell,
even if you take Almirola, you still have like 6,800 for the last 2 drivers.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're looking at this week, folks. Is you got to get You got to get interesting with your builds. Like Austin Dillon, put him in there. Stenhouse. And 6,800. Hey, look, guess who I wind up with? Eric Almirola. Harvick, Blaney, Truex, Austin Dillon, Stenhouse, and Almirola.
Free lineup. Enter it. Win big.
We'll see.
Anything else you wanted to touch on? I know we're both kind of fading. It's kind of late. Long day for you, I'm assuming. Long day for me.
Yeah,
Is there
I'm
anything else
also
you want?
battling some cold of some sort. I tested negative for COVID, but like worn down by like 6 o'clock, which is weird. No, I would say, strategy wise, it's going to be two dominators, and then just kind of try to peg the guys that can finish the highest.
If you can
Right.
make a 3 dominator lineup and you're comfortable with it, go with it.
Go with it. I mean, we did see four guys lead more than 60 laps here in the
Yeah.
spring. I'm kind of expecting a similar result this weekend. I don't think anybody at this point in the season is simply going to run away and hide for a race here. But yeah, I mean, other than that, you know, normal content schedule playbook will be out Saturday, projections Saturday, sample lineup Sunday. I'm on playbook this week for Cup Series. And yeah, and if anybody has Sirius XM radio, you can catch me not only on with Ben Stee on Alarm After Hours on Friday night, but you can also catch me on NASCAR radio at 1:30 Eastern on Sunday. I will be talking DFS and fantasy for the race about an hour and a half before green flag drops.
Nice.
So yeah, so that should be a fun time. But yeah, other than that, it's Richmond. We got 3 races left until the playoffs, and then Ross Chastain will no longer exist in the Cup Series because he's going to get run over in every playoff race. It's going to be amazing. He's going to be smashed like a watermelon. So yeah, well, who knows? If we get a 16th winner this weekend, all hell is going to break loose in the next 2 races.
All right. Well, man, thank you for your time. Best of luck to you this week, and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.